Namaste, Namaskaram. Welcome to Heritage Utsav 2021. And we at Gurucool are very, very excited to partner with Skadoosh to bring Heritage Utsav to your screens today. This day actually commemorates the completion of our first YouTube series called But Why, where we sourced 100 questions from children all around the globe, and we sourced 14 experts to answer those questions. And all these questions are on everything in tech. We got questions from across 11 countries and 30 plus cities, and we have had 1.5 lakh views on this YouTube series alone. We are very, very thrilled to commemorate this large YouTube series, Our Baby Step, with this week long celebration. And I'm very, very excited to have three eminent women kick off this. Let's start the whole session with a prayer. वक्रतुण्डमहाकाय सूर्यकोटिसमप्रभ निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा. We have a very small video to show you on how this But Why started and what we achieved in this series.
Tomato Pradakshana clockwise with kings give harsher punishment.
Amidst all things one can do on a Thursday evening, you all have joined us to listen to three eminent women who are so rooted in Indian heritage and culture and inspire many like ourselves every day. A big thanks to all of you who have chosen our event over all the other commitments. I'm very happy to welcome our first panelist, Roopa Pai, journalist and children's author who has published more than 20 books. Her book, Gita for Children, has garnered many awards and is a must read for every child and adult alike. Roopa has traveled across the globe and her passion lies in writing. Welcome, Roopa.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Charanya.
Our second panelist for the evening is Anuradha Goyal, who wears many hats to pursue her three prime passions: business innovation, travel, and books. She is the founder of Indie Tales, a leading bilingual travel media portal with a focus on ancient India. An avid reader, she has more than 700 book reviews to her credit, earning her a place in the Limca Book of Records. She has also authored multiple books, including Lotus in the Stone and Unusual Temples of India. Welcome, Anuradha.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Arun.
Our third panelist for the evening is Annu Kalra, a spiritually inspired artist, author, and guide. Anu is devoting most of her time and energy to facilitating transformation in people and their lives. She has created a self help set of cards and book called Avirbhav. Anu conducts workshops, holds musings and mystical art sessions, moderates cafe spirituality sessions, gives personal counseling, does guided meditations, and also writes extensively about spirituality and interpretations of traditional wisdom in the modern context. Welcome, Anu.
Thank you.
An interesting similarity between the three women, I don't know if the three of you noticed, is that you all started your careers doing something very different. I know Rupa is an engineer by education. Anu spent about 20 years in the corporate as a media planner and brand consultant. And also Anuradha, if I remember right, she pursued her computer science in her post graduation and spent about 15 years in the IT industry. So let's start from that point. When we talk about corporate life, we almost always think of a mechanical life away from our culture and heritage, and all that. So, what does staying rooted mean to you today, and what did it mean to you while you were leading the corporate life? So we'll start with Rupa.
So I've never led a corporate life actually. I just finished my engineering.
Oh.
My engineering was actually a detour. Everybody thinks that I was an engineer who took a detour into writing, but actually, I always wanted to be a writer, and I just happened to be born in a South Indian middle class family, which said that if you have the ability to get good marks in science, then you please kindly do a professional degree, either medicine or engineering. So, and after that, once you're, and my mom totally played the feminist card and said that I want my daughters to be able to stand on their own feet and that they should have professional degree and they should never depend financially on a man and all this. So, I said, okay, fine. So, finished my engineering, gave her the degree. I said, now you can do what you want with it. I did this for you. And now I'm going to go off and write. So, that was my journey actually. But as far as staying rooted goes, I think yes, I have a great debt to pay to my parents. They were very rooted, and even though I perhaps scoffed at it a little bit growing up, it did dig its tentacles into me and made me also rooted. And there was something intrinsically also within me that felt very close to this land and this philosophy, and it was nurtured by a great love for Amar Katha comics growing up in Indian mythology. So yeah, I didn't, I always loved Indian mythology, but only now in hindsight, looking back, I see what a huge influence it was in my life. Yeah.
Great. Anu?
Oh my God. I mean, it's like hearing my story. Chitrakarta is what I owe a great deal of thanks to. I think my first reading of the Bhagavad Gita happened in the Chitrakarta. And scoffing at the value system that the parents were trying to imbibe into me. Yes, I shared that with you as well. But I think somewhere around the line, when I was struggling after having rebelled and moved away from all that one had been taught, when I found myself struggling as a work life balance. I was a career in advertising, children at home, middle class Punjabi family, having to deal with the expectations and manage those, and how I was feeling completely spent and falling ill in the process, not just at the physical level, but there was a lot of turmoil happening. And that is when I found spirituality, and that root, getting rooted in that made me capable of enjoying and expressing so much better and grow so much more that it's almost like when you give up smoking and you realize how much better you feel, you breathe better, and you want to help everybody who smokes, saying, listen, it's possible to give this up, and this is how I did it. So that became kind of my way of life. And I wouldn't say rediscover, but that unfoldment became very fast, figuring out what has been said in our Vedas, the scientific understanding behind what they were saying, and that is when I started appreciating rituals and being taught, and therefore I became a big promoter of the Indic culture, so to say.
That's interesting. Anuradha, for you it must have been drastic, I would assume.
Not really, not really. So I grew up in army cantonments. My father worked in defense, so we grew up in a pretty much agnostic environment. Where it was like whatever it is, just bow your head, seek blessings, and move on, kind of thing. And I think, like every middle class family, the goal was to go study, get a good job, get a ensure a good future. So I did all that. But I had one advantage. I grew up with my grandmother primarily because my parents were moving. So I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, and she is the biggest influence in my life. So, and grandparents have a very subtle way of injecting things into you as compared to parents. With parents, we become a rebel, and and they also force things upon us. But grandparents, they very subtly, through stories, through small things. In fact, I mentioned in Lotus in the Stone the whole story of how my grandmother
just removed a lot of lot of prejudices that could have killed me later. Things which are, I grew up in Punjab, so if you grow up with that dark skin like this, yeah, there's a lot to deal with. But one stroke, she took it out of me. So I was very, very grounded always. I remember as a single working woman in Delhi, Noida in the late 90s. My best friend was a Chinmaya Mission Swamini, who, Chinmaya Mission used to be close to my house. And, I used to have dinners with her instead of having dinners with my friends and all that. So I was always rooted. Um, so, and then my biggest connection happened when I started traveling very, very proactively. So initially travels were all about leisure travel, so there's a weekend and let's go out and travel, let's go out and see, get out of the city, get out of the office kind of thing. But I had a journey from there to becoming a pilgrim. Today, I would not go to a place just to eat out or just to do something. I will go out to connect with the place. So that journey was gradual, but I guess my routings were always there. And the more I'm reading, and I started reading all the scriptures about 5 years back in original in Sanskrit. And that's one, I mean, every day morning I spend about hour or 2 hours reading. And every time I get up from my reading desk, the first thing I tell my husband is, I've had my dose of ignorance today. I've learned how ignorant I have been, and I've had these books in my library and I've not read it, and nobody
Which
told
is
us that they even exist. So
correct.
now the idea is just like Anu said, at least let people know this exists. This is our heritage. Our ancestors wrote this. Our ancestors created this. This is not created or written by some strangers.
Right.
In fact,
So that
sorry.
sorry to interrupt, Anuradha. So that actually brings me to a question which all of you kind of touched base upon. The seed that was thrown in when you were young actually kind of grew when you all grew
Absolutely.
up. So in today's competitive world, parents always want to give their children an advantage over their contemporaries, their competitors. Now the rise of all the edtech platforms around us is actually in line with it. Amidst all this, why do you think should parents prioritize this rootedness? Do you think this should become part of the curriculum? Do you think it's merely a luxury, a nice to have, or is this essential for children's success? We'll start with Rupa on this.
Mm, oh, I mean, it's vital. It's absolutely vital to be rooted. Let there be no doubt about this at all. Because, even if you take that very simple metaphor of only if a tree is deeply rooted, can it really extend itself and grow and spread and continue to propagate itself through seeds or roots or whatever. But it has to have that grounding to be able to spread itself. And I'll illustrate this with what happened to me in my childhood. Apart from Amidst Kathas, the great love of my life was Enid Blyton. And luckily for us, as children of the 80s and 70s, she had written some 700 books. And all the circulating libraries in every neighborhood was absolutely stocked with her books. Uh, so you never ran out of Enid Blyton books to read, which was fantastic. The only problem, I mean, because she taught me how to tell a story, crackling dialogue, great characterization, wonderful plotting. So all that was fantastic, and great morals and values taught without being preachy. So I would say she was as much a part of my moral science education as the Indian mythological stories or my parents or anything. The only problem with reading so much Enid Blyton was that I grew up feeling that only British children had cool childhoods, and my childhood somehow paled in comparison. It sucked because there were never any adults around in Enid Blyton books. Even if you look at Secret Seven, the only function of the adult was to provide squash and biscuits when
Right.
they were having their meetings. And in Famous Five, George's father had to provide a boat for them to row over to Killen Island. That was basically the adults' engagement. And in the end, when the children had caught the smugglers or solved a mystery or something, then adults would come in again, like the police officers or whatever, to take over. But it seemed like an endlessly glorious childhood where the sun always was shining and unsupervised children were riding through the countryside with green rolling hills on every side. And then they would stop at farms and have fresh milk and have the most amazing picnics with all kinds of fun food coming out of tins and cans. And, and I was like, my God, my childhood is just 20,000 people stuffed into an ambassador and going somewhere. Okay. And we always went to the same places for picnics, and the picnic lunch was always lemon rice and curd rice. And I'm like, no, this cannot be the fun childhood that everybody else is having. And
True.
the picture flipped only when I was about 13 or 14, and this fabulous magazine called Target arrived into my world. It had been around for a while, but I came across it only when I was 13 or 14. And it told stories about Indian. So they, unfortunately, at that time, we didn't have too many stories about Indian children like me. There was Amidst Katha, but it was always harking back to the storied past of kings and apsaras and all that, which didn't have any connection to me. Even the children there were so good, like Nachiketa and Dhruva, and always scary. Like you can't be like them anyway, and their whole engagement with the world was very different. And so only in it black and I found resonance. And in Target, there were stories written by Indian authors which talked about children exactly like me, urban children living my kind of life, but they seem to be having a wonderful life and having lots of fun. And I'm like, oh, wait, have I been looking at this picture all wrong? Maybe my life is actually really fun. Maybe I'm having lemon rice and curd rice for lunch at picnics because somebody cared enough to wake up and make it for me fresh that morning. And maybe I'm surrounded by so many cousins and aunts and uncles who are interfering and who have an opinion about my life and who always have things to say because I'm so lucky to be in the heart of family always and have not just two, but so many nurturing adults who care about me always around me. So once that flip happened in my head, I was always wanted to be a writer, but it sort of changed. It crystallized to I want to be a writer of children's stories and I want to write Indian stories for Indian children because I don't want another generation growing up feeling that somebody else has a better childhood and my childhood is not so fun. So that rootedness suddenly I determined right then and there that my whenever if I wrote fantasy, and I did, if I wrote fantasy adventure or something, I would not have goblins and dwarves and fairies, because we have such a wealth of bizarre and wonderful characters and animals and birds to choose from in our own mythology. And why wouldn't we source that in our own temple walls? Everywhere we are surrounded by this, but our books are full of foreign creatures. And I'm like, no, 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 this can't be right. There's something
Yeah.
wrong with this picture. So, yeah, rootedness, like Gandhiji said, I I would love the winds of every culture to waft through. My windows are always open so that the winds of every culture can waft through my house. But I refuse to be blown off by my feet by any of them. So to be able to not be blown off your feet by you have to be open, of course, to receiving all the time, everything. The greatest danger in not knowing your own is that you will be seduced by other people's stories. If you don't know your own story, other people's stories begin to sound very wonderful. But the
Right.
even bigger danger is that you will begin to believe the stories about yourself that other people tell you about you
True.
because you don't know them yourself. Yeah, so yeah, I think it's
So,
quite.
Anu, I know you do counseling sessions. Have you seen, the lack of rootedness manifest in, in not so good ways in adults, or vice versa? Do you see that as a problem at all, because you're into counseling?
I don't have to go far. I mean, I look at my own life. I kind of pushed back from that and then found my stability back only in that. And therefore, instead of, but when somebody comes in pain, that is not the time to teach them about culture, but you take some nuggets out of the things that can work and share with them, and hopefully they will find their way back to it.
Hmm.
But I'm in agreement with each and every word Rupa said, how important it is for us to know our stories. And when I was rearing up my own children, I never felt the need. I was on this complete drive of being a liberal secular person, which is absolutely fine. But why did I need to disown my own culture? I still don't understand. It was coming from a pushback of having accepted other people's story about me because my roots were not strong enough. It's only because of as a much older person, I found where I had gone wrong, and therefore I would like others not to make those mistakes, because there are times when I have arguments with my grown up children because they cannot see the validity of what I'm saying, because of the kind of childhood I gave them. And it's also true that rooting, if the values are correct, at least that allows for dialogue, that allows for engagement. And just as
Yes.
I have found my way back to it, they can find it too when they feel the need, and they will, just like I did, because that is the seed was sown, right? It will grow up into a tree when it has to, and fruit when it has to. It may not be immediate, but that's all right, because there is the other spectrum also, where if you do not understand it, do not know the rationale behind it, and have just stuffed it down somebody's face because aisa karna hota hai, and that
Right.
creates a lot of rebelliousness inside the person and leads to greater problems. So I would say, as parents, I mean, I hope I will be a good grandparent eventually and help some child like Anuradha has been helped by her grandmother. I really aspire for it. But if the important thing is to be rooted in values, and you will find that I discovered later that everything that I believed in from a human perspective is what my Vedas have offered. I was just not
I
served
I
it
know.
in
Very
that
true.
manner. That
So
is all.
true.
That's actually very interesting point. But before that, thank you so much for validating the premise with which Gurukul was founded. We founded Gurukul saying that you sow the seeds when you just catch them young. You sow the seeds, it will come back. It will grow when the time is right, and they will find their roots at some point. So that actually, you talked about parents and all that. Today, if you see, the adolescents do not find it cool to be rooted, the spirituality or religion. As a matter of fact, even wearing traditional clothes and going to a temple, celebrating a certain festival is not cool. So, at what point do you think we can intervene? Number one, and two, how do you make sure that it is, it is sounding cool to them as adolescents? Anuradha, would you like to take this up and answer? Because I know you've traveled a lot. Do you see this only in urban, or also in the rural?
You know what I have discovered is that beneath a veneer, all our adolescents and all the youth, they are actually pretty connected and pretty rooted. It's just that they don't want to talk about it. I'll tell you, I'll give you an example.
Interesting.
I traveled with a very young journalist who was absolutely party going kinds, and I had arranged a temple tour for myself at 6 in the morning. And she said, "Can I come with you?" I said, "Sure, if you can be in the lobby at 6 o'clock." She was there at 5:45. She prayed far more, with far more devotion than I ever have. Everything is just that in the evening when she was with the party crowd, she would not mention it. And I have ample examples of this. It's just that that age group doesn't want to talk about it because it's not seen cool. So I have a lot of these incidents mentioned in my book. uh, so I have my hopes. It's just that they're not talking about it. You get into these clubhouse conversations where a lot of these youngsters are talking, and you figure out that they're rooted. They have faith in the things we want them to have faith in, but talking about it is not cool. There's a very small minuscule percentage of people who we tend to call secular liberal, but a very small percentage which is potentially been hired to create a certain narrative, It's a very, very small percentage. A larger audience. I've traveled and spoken at in the hinterlands with with college children, university students. I find them extremely well rooted. It's just that they don't want to portray that image.
That's interesting. So, Rupa, your take on it. You conduct a lot of workshops with children.
Yeah.
What do you think is the sense that you get from children these days?
See, I think that children are receptive beings. They are willing to receive if whatever you want to give them is delivered in a non-judgmental fashion, and if it's not, if it in a fun fashion, and in a relevant way, something that they can relate to in their own lives. When you do that, when you engage with them respectfully, and you don't come with your own preconceived notions, but your generation, you will not know this and you perhaps don't know, and if you don't start, or you don't even have to say those things, they can sense it. I mean, we all know that people, they can easily sense your openness to their opinion. So if you go with an open mind, willing to accept them as their opinions as valid, and their ideas as also like worth giving respect to, then they open themselves up to you, and then you can tell them stuff and they will listen respectfully also. And where I have seen so often that they completely, the way you present it to them in a cool way. I mean, you don't have to be ultra cool. Like when I was writing the Gita for children, there was a debate, in my head and with my editor and all. Like, should Krishna call Arjuna dude? Or should they call each other those kinds of things to make it more? And I completely vetoed it. I said, no, it's a very sacred text. Let them never lose sight of the fact that it's sacred. We can be perhaps a little conversational, colloquial in in their how they talk to each other,
Right.
but we should never be irreverent or disrespectful at all, because I want them to get a sense of the gravity of it. And I'm also part of a company called Bangalore Walks, and we do history and heritage walks around Karnataka for school children. And when we used to organize trips for school children, 11th, 12th teenagers, and we would say, we are taking you to an 11th century temple, and there would be such a collective groan from the class. They would say, why can't we go to Goa, where Anuradha lived? Or why don't we go to Wonderla, some water park? Are you kidding me, ma'am? You want to take us to a temple? Like, what kind of field trip is that? What kind of. But I mean, I used to take them to the Belur Halebit temples and explain the architecture. And we used to have a game, like a team game called Temple Run, where they go and find certain things like a treasure hunt. Can you find this figure? And you have to catch a guide, ask him what it means. And they would come back completely blown in their minds about, wow, this was so, because they approached it in a different way. So I think the onus is on us as parents and teachers also. The only way to counter this huge assault from the West and from within our own country, which continues that colonial thing of your stuff is not as good as our stuff, the only way to counter it is by using that language again, to make it sound like, but it is everything that the West is telling you that they have figured out, we had figured out thousands of years before.
And in a
So
far
there is.
more nuanced manner.
Yeah, yeah, yes. And I feel that it has actually improved since I was a child. I think children today are far more proud to be Indian. They wear their Indianness on their sleeve with much more pride. They are not mimicking accents of for foreigners when they come here. They say, "Boss, you understand us, or forget it. It's your problem. We speak like this. We are like this only." They wear it much more than we did, for sure. I feel.
That's a very interesting take. So, if I may ask you to, tell me three philosophies from our ancient texts that you would want children to take away, how would you present it? What is it, and how would you present it?
Uh, First, of course, is the fact that how we see God. Because a lot of the problems in the world are because of religion, and because one religion says that their God is more valid than somebody else's God. But Hinduism or Indic thinking in general, even predating Hinduism, Vedic culture, etc., it it was so liberal in its understanding of a supreme energy that it was genderless, uh, nameless, formless, just a supreme energy that is both transcendent, which is all around you and beyond you, and immanent. It lives within you. So, and in that kind of broad, liberal understanding of a supreme energy, any god can fit, of any name, any form. So we have actually no problems with anybody saying, but we worship in a church. Okay, I'll come there also and light a candle. Doesn't no skin off my nose. I can do that. Hedging my bets. If my gods don't give me, at least yours might. You can make jokes about it, but actually, it's a very liberal mindset. So that is one. It's not tolerance. Tolerance is a terrible word. What we have here is acceptance, a complete acceptance of different ways of thinking. So that is very deeply embedded in the ancient scriptures. The other one is a huge uh, mm, you are exhorted to question and not believe. You are exhorted to go on your own journey of discovery. The rishis are only saying, boss, this is what I figured out on my journey, and this is just road post, signpost to help you along your way. But you will have to find your own way yourself. So, question received wisdom. I mean, it is as modern and cutting edge an idea as anything else. Do not believe what people tell you. Question received wisdom. Always challenge it. Hold your ground. That's the second one. And the third one, the wisest, largest, most empowering thing of all, is that you control your own destiny. And it's the thing is, for some reason it has always been portrayed as Hindus are like always, they believe in the predestination and fate and all that. So almost as if you can't do anything about it. There's no such thing as free will. Everything is predetermined. In fact, we invented the idea of free will, because in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, it says very clearly, a man is nothing but his deepest driving desire. As is his desire, so is his will. As is his will, so is his action. As is his action, so is his destiny. So if you control desire, you can control your destiny. So, and this is a philosophy not of the pursuit of happiness, because these guys got it figured out very early that happiness is a transient stage. It comes and goes. They said what we are pursuing in this life, the goal of this life is freedom and fearlessness. To live fearless and free, that is the way to live, not in the pursuit of happiness. So I think those three would be my picks.
Very, very beautifully put. Especially, it's so much again in line with why we started, but why we really wanted to. When we ran our workshops, we would get all these interesting questions, starting from who is God, where is He, and then all the way up to there was one very interesting question which said, every character has shades of gray. Then why is one a hero and one a villain? What defines them? So it's extremely interesting because actually in none of our texts is one portrayed as a hero or a villain. It's a character. That's what it is. So thank you so much for it. Now, being rooted can actually mean many different things. Rooted to your culture, heritage, but also rooted to your land, your surroundings, the dialects around you, and many more things. But today, especially in the urban setting, there is a homogenization among children. Most of them watch the same Netflix shows, they play the same video games, and speak mostly in English. Especially, I'm talking about this urban crowd, as I mentioned. Now, from your travels, Anuradha, and observations, could you tell us why being connected to our land, the customs of our land, the folklore is important? Does anyone lose anything by not being aware of our local histories?
Yes. Before I answer that, I want to add something to what Rupa said. Information today is available. Books are available, all kinds of lectures, everything is available, and kids are far better than us in accessing them. What I find missing is the anubhav, their own experience, or the urge to experience and figure out things for themselves. There's too much focus on teaching and two, less focus on learning, because what you can teach is very, very small, and what I can learn is infinite. So that focus somewhere, I believe, needs to come. Now, coming to your question, uh, I take a workshop on Indian calendar, which I'm going to do for you tomorrow, day after. And if you see the calendars across India, they are always rooted in a place. So a calendar for Varanasi, a calendar for, let's say, Pune, calendar for Bangalore, which is based on the latitude, longitude. If you see the festivals mentioned in those local calendars, they are always rooted in the seasonal cycle of that land. Now, India is a huge country. The local customs, and we all follow a very seasonal, rooted in the agrarian society. We had uh, everything rooted in the cycle of rains and the cycle of seasons. They differ from place to place. So there is nothing called one homogeneous thing. The only thing that is common is some 20 odd or 25 odd common festivals that we celebrate on the what we call parvas. The five tithis, the parvas, what we call. So those we celebrate together, but those are also celebrated differently in different parts of the country based on the local folklore or local stories. For example, let's say Krishna. Everybody knows the character of Krishna. When you travel to Braj, Mathura, Vrindavan area, he's always there with Radha. In fact, Radha takes prominence over him. Everything there is Radhe Radhe, whether it's hello or bye bye or excuse me, and even if somebody wants to scold you, they'll say Radhe Radhe. So everything is Radhe Radhe there. Uh, and Radha is there. Rukmini is absolutely absent. But when you move to Dwarka, Radha is absent and Rukmini is there. The Krishna in Mathura Vrindavan is still a child who's playing on the banks of Yamuna. In Dwarka, he's like this family man, always surrounded by his family, his extended family. So the folklore itself, our lore is rooted in the place. Our traditions are rooted in the place. Now, Krishna in Dwarka does not play bansuri. Okay, he's a typical family man responsible for running a kingdom that he's created. I'm taking these two examples, but I have a lot of these examples somewhere either on my blogs or in the books. So everything is very rooted. So if I'm not connected with that, then I am missing out on that. And second, Rupa, correct me if I'm wrong. In Taittiriya Upanishad, it says that if you have a doubt which tradition to follow, you should follow the local tradition, is what the Upanishad says.
Yeah.
It's very, very clear. There is no doubt left whatsoever. So if I am, for example, I'm a North Indian married to a South Indian, and if I'm in South India, I have to follow the dates and traditions that they follow. So if I'm not leveraging that, then I'm missing out on that diversity. Even food, if you see in Anu, if in Delhi, you have this huge, in the summers you have all the watery things, and in the winters you have all the gulab jamuns and gajar ka halwas and chola bhaturas, right? But if you are in Bangalore, 12 months you have the same food because your weather is more or less the same. So everything, right from our food to what pleases us, and you'll see the temperament. You see a Delhi person, their temperament goes up and down, and a Bangalore person, they're like stable. They hardly their moods hardly change. It
But
impacts
the
us
weather
at,
doesn't change either.
yeah,
That's why. That's why.
that's the base, the season.
Yeah.
So we have to, and I'm sure if you make your your universe as, let's say, a smaller part of South India or Karnataka, let's say, you'll find variations there.
Oh, true.
So yeah, and a typical thing is like when you're outside India, you're just an Indian. When you come to India, you become South Indian, North Indian, West Indian. You go to Karnataka, you become North Canada, South Canada. You come down and you go down to the family level. Your family does this, my family does this. So variations, nuances exist. In fact, my biggest learning from reading our scriptures is the nuances that it captures. 10 types of water and 10 types of fire, which scientific community has figured that out?
Right. It's actually very interesting that, the way you put it, because I always feel that understanding my own self and the culture that I come from has helped me understand myself as a person. So, in turn, I have been able to understand the other people also. So going that route, I know what questions to ask. If I want to connect with Rupa, I want to connect with, I know exactly what questions to ask them, so that I get to that thing. Sometimes if Anu is going to come and have a hearty laugh, if I'm an introverted person, if I'm going to look everything black and white, I'm not going to understand if I don't understand her culture, where she comes from. It's not just about who she is as a personality, but it's also about what she brings with her in terms of the culture and the roots. Sorry, Anu, I just picked on you because I know you so. No, not to pick on you.
But
Big
that's
thing.
absolutely fine. It's absolutely fine. If you look, if you look at Lord Ganesha, for example, this big belly he has, and he loves modaks, right? But when you do the prasad for him, you also have to include jamun in it, and
Right.
which looks like a tradition from an area, but there's a huge understanding of Ayurveda there, that somebody who relates to this pot-bellied god would be fond of eating and is likely to get into diabetes, and therefore with the modak let him also have a jamun. Look at how wise they were, our ancients were, who created these scriptures, and all these rituals. So I have been wide-eyed ever since I've started exploring this, and I'm quite happy that this sense of bewilderment is spreading, and more people are interested in getting to know this. But
Yeah, and it's really like one thing. Once you enter one portal from anywhere into this,
Anywhere.
and then it's a rabbit hole, it's a maze. You cannot come out. It just leads from one thing to another, to another, to another, and you're like caught in this.
and we must reclaim pride in it, because
Yes.
I, as a
Yeah.
child, since the age of 5, was doing yoga asanas, but I was embarrassed to say this anywhere, that I do asanas. It is fashionable now. In fact, now I keep
Yeah.
correcting people, saying, "Aap yoga nahi karte, aap asan kar rahe the." Aap
Exactly.
asan kar rahe the. You were not doing yoga, you were doing asan. Yoga is a way of life. But the point is, I found the courage to say that I am doing asans only after I read a book from a Westerner, and then I said, "Oh, the West is also accepting, so it is a good thing." Imagine how sad is that? It is
That's right.
because,
Yeah.
and that is why this movement to take pride in our Indic culture is very, very important. Because, and local, when Anuradha was talking about, when architects look at a place, they will use construction material from there, no?
Right.
Right? So
For
when we're
that,
building
I
our
have
lives, when we're
yeah.
building
For that, I have a typical example of these corporate offices in Bangalore and all the new age places like Gurgaon. But when I look at Bangalore, I said, why do they need air conditioned glass and steel structures? It's just the ignorance of our own basic lifestyles,
Very true.
right?
And
Very true.
language is the other thing, no? So many words in certain languages are only exist in those languages because they're rooted to the geography or the culture of those people. There is no translation for that in other languages,
No.
even within Indian languages. So if you have to understand the people, you have to learn their language. Otherwise, you
But
miss
Rupa,
out.
I figured out that every language in India has a certain subset of words from Sanskrit. But
Yes, yes,
they're spoken with a
yes,
different sound. The sound
yes,
is very, very
yes.
different.
Yeah.
I was traveling in Kanchipuram. I was there for 10 days exploring temples, and I didn't know a single soul there. And I can't speak a word of Tamil. But because I could do a mapping between Tamil and Sanskrit words, just the sound of it, I could survive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if
I
as a
think
Hindi
Tamil
speaker,
must be the least number of Sanskrit words, in fact. I would
no,
imagine.
not
Tamil probably
really, not
not
really. The
really.
sound becomes very different. So
Acha.
Gomati becomes Komati, Pa becomes Ba, Ga becomes, something. If you can do that mapping, it is,
Yeah.
you can literally figure out the language.
Yeah.
Literally figure out the language.
Yeah, but
Well,
Punjabi is
that's
easier.
actually
You have to just add a few words to any sentence and it will become Punjabi. in any language.
It's funny.
Like,
So that
you
brings
ask
me,
my kid to do anything, it becomes Punjabi.
uh,
uh,
you know,
so
with
yeah, and Anuradha, that's actually a very interesting thing. So, I know a lot of people, when they travel abroad, especially, they go to these fancy places like France or Spain, they always want to learn, the first few words in Spanish or French. They come back saying mercy and all of that, hola. Now, what are the top five things, because I know you've done a workshop on this as well, on staying rooted and knowing your own, that on knowing your land. So what are the top five questions that you think anybody should answer or get to know when they visit a new land within India?
uh, see, it depends on what you want. So it really depends on what kind of place you're visiting. If you're in the corporate office, you need to know, that kind of a language. But if you can, I mean, I don't know about the language. I think you just pick up based on your need what it is.
I'm
But
not talking about the language, but like for example, is it something about the rivers that flow there? Is it about their picking up few words from the local language, or is it about knowing their food? What are some things that you think anybody, if I were to visit Goa, for example, what are the five things that you think I should ask so
I
so I
will,
know Goa?
yeah, no, I will never answer that question, Charanya, because that is so much dependent on what are you here for. You know, it is absolutely a function of what are you here for. Otherwise, you will be seeing Goa as I see it. I will make you go to the places where there is no non-veg, where there is no alcohol, there is no party, and then you'll say, why did I come to Goa? You know, so it is a function of what you want to do. A destination is a complete ecosystem in itself. It's a universe in itself. What are you there for?
Okay.
Just like a reader meets an author at the intersection of their individual experiences, a traveler also meets the destination at their own experience, at the intersection of in the life of destination and the life of the traveler. It's a very, very, I don't want to give a, I mean, when I'm asked like which are the five top destinations you have, I don't
Hmm.
know.
Interesting.
I'm
So, if I
proud
may
of
flip
it.
that question to Anu, if when you travel, what do you look for? What are some things that attract your eyes, and what do you go after when you travel?
So, off late, most of my travel has been about pilgrimage, and this happened the first time I went to the Tirupati Balaji temple about 10, 12 years back. Till then, I had no experience in a temple. Like I would just look at a temple and wonder why people go and stand in the line. But once I went to Tirupati Balaji, and I can't explain the experience I had. What Anuradha was saying, the Anubhav. Once that experience happened, something in me kind of, I kind of went into a trance just looking at that, the
Right.
Swaroop of the Lord there. And after that, I think some part of me like some people are adrenaline junkies. I am a junkie for that experience of connection, of feeling that energy, and therefore I find myself going to various temples. I loved Guwahati, the Kamakhya temple there, and a couple of years back when I was in the US and I went to the redwood forest, this 2,000-year-old trees, I actually felt like I was in a Shakti Peeth. I felt the same kind of energy inside me. So I know it is not to do with the structure. I know it is not to do with an ideology.
No,
It is to
no,
do with the energy of that place and how I
yes,
connect with it.
absolutely.
So to put down in words what it is, I don't know. I just know that some place calls to me and it takes me there, and that experience then justifies why I was called there. I can't say more than that.
Very, very interesting. You actually, you walked us through what it felt like when you travel to those places. So I'm going to have one last question for all three of you here. What do you think parents and children today can do differently or can do more to stay rooted? And what's going to happen if they don't do it? I'll start with Rupa.
I think It's the responsibility of parents, if they want their children to be rooted, to first center themselves and ground themselves. It's very much my life is my message. You role model it for your children. You don't even try to tell them what to do. That will go badly, as we all know and have all. So that doesn't help. But not only in talking up your own culture, not just that. Of course, that you will do because you are so into it, so it will keep pouring out of you to your children and they'll be forced to listen. That's one thing. But also never to diss anybody else's culture. I think that is a
Very true.
great quality of India, to be accepting of everything else. And that is enough rootedness for your child, to make them accepting of everyone and everything else. That is what it means to be Indian. To never say that somebody is wrong, never say my perspective is right, but to open. I recently, Anuradha is obviously an expert at Sanskrit, but I have only recently begun to study Sanskrit for the first time in my life. I had never studied it in school, and one of the first things my teacher said was namaste. The word comes, I mean, they keep saying that in Sanskrit, the meaning of the word is contained in the sound of the word. If you meditate on the sound of the word, you will understand what it means. And there is a great emphasis and importance given to the dhatu, the root sound. So you can understand the meaning of any word if you can catch the root sound in it. If you can catch the root sound, you can not only understand the meaning of the word, you can create your own words around it. So in Namaste, the root is apparently nam, and nam means to bend. Okay, so when you say Namaste, it's you're saying or te namaha, you're saying I bend to you, and you follow with that actual action at a very literal level. But if you take it to a metaphorical level, bending, to bend means to be flexible. And when you say namaste to somebody, you're saying, I'm making myself flexible and open to receive what you are giving. I'm not going to stand here rigidly saying, this is what I think, and what you think I will tolerate, but I will not accept. No, it's saying, I will bow, I will make myself flexible to receive you, your lifestyle, your ideology, your gods, your skin color, your religion, your country, everything, your culture, your practices. I receive everything. So when you say, when now I've started saying namaste to everybody, because first of all, Corona, so better not shake anybody's hand. But more importantly, now that I understand what it means, I try to remind myself of it every time and say, Namaste, I'm ready to accept you. That's a great reminder to yourself every time you greet somebody, that hello, 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 stop, stop. You're saying that you'll receive it. Now don't start becoming rigid when somebody expresses an opinion that's different from yours. So if you can just help children to be vast and liberal in their mindset, you've already done your job about making them Indian, I think.
Wow. Anu?
I'm in complete agreement. We can't expect children to listen to our advice and ignore our example. we
Yes.
got to walk the talk. And I think that is probably, even though I did not understand a lot about Indic values or know about my dharma or the Vedas, but while I was rearing my children, I was honest, I was upfront, I was if I was, if I was being irritated, I would accept that, okay, it is not your fault, I am tired, therefore I am getting irritated with you, so give me some space. And those are the values they imbibe. And also, if we can find what is it that the children resonate with and help them find their connection with that, because both my children have had immense musical intelligence. And just a couple of days back, my eldest son, who stays in the US, asked me if he can get a copy of the Samveda because he wants to learn more about music through that.
Wow.
Wow.
My job is done.
Yeah.
Right? So when I would hum to him, when I would bathe him, I used to chant the Gayatri mantra. I wasn't even aware of why I was doing it. I only got to know much later that it is the best way to purify yourself. That when you're taking a bath, you chant the Gayatri mantra. I was just doing it instinctively with my baby. So these kind of things, and it's all right. As parents, we also make mistakes. There are things we discover about ourselves when we grow up and we realize, oh, I did this wrong. But that's okay. We can forgive. When you look at the Ashtang Yoga, and the first yam is ahimsa. So hinsa to apne saath bhi nahi karni hai.
Hmm.
True.
And if one can, one can actually follow that in one's life, any value system which is deep rooted, which is increasing the harmony of the world, that is what we need, right? That is basically what we're looking for. We don't want to give certificates and saying this is good Hindu, this is bad Hindu. If you haven't converted, you're not a good person. What, I mean, that is not, that is far away from our reality, right? So I wouldn't even want to get into that.
True. Wonderful. Anuradha.
So when I see children around me, I see them simply running from, school to this coaching class to that coaching class to that, where they're constantly being taught something. I want them to have certain unstructured space in which they can make their own mistakes and learn. And I'll go back to the word anubhav. Let them have their uh, own learnings. They will have their own learnings in their own time and space. Like we couldn't have made a mistake with mobile phones in our childhood, but these days they make. Uh, Whatever. So I want them to have some unstructured space where they can just play around and be creative. I somehow feel that their times are too stuffed and leaving them almost zero space mentally and physically to do anything that they may want to do or explore.
Very beautifully said. So we have a couple of questions here from our viewers. We have 3 minutes, so we will very quickly go over a couple of questions. The first question is to Anuradha. Why is Goa called Goa?
Okay. Goa, the original name is Goa Puri. It comes from Go. In fact, the river here, which is now known as Mandovi, it was few hundred years back, it was known as Madhei, but its ancient name is Gomati. So potentially it came from there. There was an ancient port here called Gopakapattanam, which used to trade with the rest of the world, and that is why probably the Portuguese came here. So Goa comes from there. So the name was in locally also in Konkani, and I'm sure Rupa knows this. It's called Goe. It's not called Goa. It's called Goe. Goa was is a Portuguese name given to you know rhyme with Lisboa.
Ah, okay.
So the Portuguese, they wanted their sound. Like I said, language is always to do with sound. So they converted Goa Puri into Goa.
Oh, interesting. I learned something new today. So we have another question for Rupa. So you mentioned liberal outlook when you spoke about our philosophy. How do you explain this quote unquote liberal outlook to teens?
Yeah, like I think I've mentioned it a couple of times already in this talk today, is to be just open to other perspectives, other views, other people, and never take this. I mean, of course, you can't sit on the fence forever, also. Allow yourself to listen respectfully to everybody, have your own, come to your own judgment or opinion about something. uh, Learn to disagree respectfully. There's no need to break friendships just because you have different opinions. And in today's polarized world, that's really, really important. It's like always, it's become George Bush Jr. Like you're either with us or against us. It doesn't have to be that way. You can be you and I can be me, and we can live harmoniously and have different opinions. That's okay. That is something. And but even though you have at this moment an opinion of what this issue looks like to you, always keep that gate, that window open, that some when some new data, fresh data that you haven't engaged with comes in, you may be able to change your mind. This blind sticking to some ideology because I think it's right without actually reflection. I mean, I totally agree with Anuradha about children needing their own anubhav space where they reflect on what they have learned and then come to synthesize it within their own minds according to their own natures and come up with this is what works for me. Because if one thing that India celebrates is individuality, somehow we have begun to think of this as a Western ideal, individual liberties, civil liberties, and somehow as if we are all one throng here, okay? But actually, individuality is most highly celebrated in India. Even our medical systems, Ayurveda will say, I will not give you an aspirin. I will ask you about your nature, your vata, pitta, kapha, and then I will give you what suits you. And I will also judge your mental, spiritual, emotional well-being in the process to see why that headache may be there for you. Your headache is not the same as everybody else's. So that individualization, customization of gods, of medicine, of learning, I mean, it's so specific and so celebrated in India. So that is what I mean by liberal. Allow everyone to be who they are. They don't have to be a mold of you.
That's very 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 beautifully said. So I think that's a very nice message to wrap up this session. It was such an enlightening session, I must say, with the three of you. I hope I have more sessions with you in the in the near future. So for the audience watching us, we have very very interesting sessions lined up every day. Today is just the first day. We have sessions lined up every day until August 5th. Tomorrow we have a storytelling by Radha Narayanan. She'll be talking to us about many stories from the war fields. The topic is going to be about Deshabhakti. And then over the weekend, we actually have Anuradha's workshop on Saturday and Sunday, two days. And following that, we have an interview with Mr. Raj Vedam on the topics of how do you accept Indic facts. It will be a very nice add-on to whatever we discussed today. How do you look at Indic facts with an open mind and critical lens? So that's going to be on Monday, and on Tuesday we have a very beautiful performance by the Pulavar family in Kerala, who will be doing a performance on Tol Pavakuttu, which is an ancient art form of shadow puppetry. And following that will be an interview with Mrs. Chitra Madhavan. She is an archaeologist and a historian. And the finale will be an interview with Mrs. Vishaka Hari. And we will again be talking about art of storytelling and the Vedic prescription for today's times. So please do sign up, and we really look forward to seeing you all in the forthcoming sessions. Thank you so much. Namaste. Namaste. Imagine a day in your life where you wake up to the bird chirps and greenery all around you. The song of the rooster ringing hard in your ears. The gentle breeze caressing your hair, reminding you of your childhood in your mother's lap. The slow and yet active-paced chores of walking to the nearest lake or pond for a bath, decorating your houses with kolam or rangoli, and filling your home with divine incense keep you mentally and physically stimulated. The idea of cooking a delicious meal and relishing it with a large group of near and dear in your house fills your head and warms your heart. After a day's hard work, you wind down with melodies and chit-chat. You enjoy a hearty laugh with your neighbor sitting on the veranda outside your house. Doesn't this melt your heart and calm you down instantly? Doesn't this bring a smile on your
I
lips?
think it's still live.
This is the power of staying rooted. From columns to architecture, from daily meals to festivities, practices to rituals and customs, community was at the center of all the decisions and design. This feeling of community and heritage gave people an identity, kept them mentally strong, and equipped them to deal with the challenges of real life. While we cannot recreate that lifestyle for our children today, we sure can incorporate some aspects of it and sow the seeds for the rest while they are still young. This is the best gift we can give the next generation so they grow up to be happy and peaceful individuals. Join Gurucool in our endeavor to help children learn more about our ancestors, our heritage, and our culture. Stay rooted, stay complete. Imagine a day in your life. Great.